row 1 is fully into position. Row 2 is just coming into position now as George Line is about to line up on this 1-by-1 staggered grid. Row 3 about to get into position, which it does now. Row 4 with James Heffernan on. His cars always ran well in the early stage of the race, but then seems to suffer a misfire as the race wears on. Hopefully the number 8 machine will have better fortunes in this one. The 5th row of the grid's in position. Row 6 is not quite in position because Philip Jeans could do with moving up a row at this stage. He's not quite where he ought to be, and Cian Carey's aware of that, so we've got a bit of shuffling that needs doing towards the tail end of the field. But the red lights are on. The lights are about to flash out now, and it's a fantastic start from George Line, the champion from last year, but a fabulous start from Tony Bishop from the 3rd row of the grid. He slots himself through into 4th as Shane Kelly tries to protect the inside line for Redgate Corner and trying to sweep his way around the outside goes Jacopo Sebastiani. He's not quite going to make it stick though, so it's Shane Kelly that leads. Jacopo Sebastiani there in 2nd position. It looks as though it's just Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, despite the good start. George Line, I think, is still there in 4th position. Where's Tony Bishop going to reappear? Because he, from the 3rd row of the grid, seemed to get the better start when the lights went out, but I don't think the gap's quite opened up as he would have wished. And in fact, no, he is still there in exactly the same position as he started from. So the good start didn't really come to a great deal for the man from Whipsnade. Also keep your eye towards the tail end of the field, because I think that Robbie Watts is already starting to try and push on and gain the odd place or two. As we look towards the conclusion very shortly of the first lap of the race, these cars really do get round the Donington Park National Circuit very, very quickly indeed. Onto the brakes, in towards Roberts they come. Shane Kelly leads the race. Jacopo Sebastiani sitting there in 2nd position. It's going to be Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, under attack from the red and white car of George Line, the champion from last year, who sits there in 4th place. Tony Bishop in 5th place, Peter Venn completing the top 6 at the wheel of car number 9. And what of the cars from the tail end of the field? Well, Robbie Watts is, by the look of things, has not come through on that lap. I'm just having a quick look to double check. No, Robbie Watts is not showing as having completed that lap. Fingers crossed. It may well just be a transponder not working as we look towards, where is he? Oh, he's there, isn't he? Yeah, he's on the inside of Schwantz Curve. Thank you very much. Yeah, car pulled off to the left-hand side just on the approach towards Schwantz Curve. So problems for Robbie Watts as he is not going to conclude this race. 2 retirements from the 3 races for this weekend for Robbie Watts, who was hoping to mount a championship charge. And when you consider in this one that they can drop 3 of the worst rounds throughout the course, so qualifying rounds less 3 determine the final championship places. Well, 2 non-finishes means that he's on the back foot really for the rest of the year now. Over the start-finish line comes Shane Kelly in the lead of the race, opened up a 1.3 second advantage on conclusion of the first lap of the race. Jacopo Sebastiani falling away in 2nd place. It's still Stuart Wiltshire having to stick his elbows out to a degree to keep the champion from last year, George Line, behind him at the wheel of the number 1 machine, as they head onto the top of the Craner curves for what is already the 3rd time in this race. After George Line, then it's Tony Bishop, Peter Venn, James Heffernan at the wheel of the number 8 car, then Mark Harrison, Malcolm Scott making progress in the tail end of the field at the wheel of number 96. He's now up into 9th position, having started down in what would have been 15th place, and Dave Gillett, number 18, completes the top 10 at this stage with Richard Purcell 11th, Cian Carey in 8th place, Adrian Holy in 9th place, and Philip Jeans as the last of the runners thereafter. So that's the order that they are in, as our race leader is already turning his way out of Coppice Corner and is heading down towards a conclusion of lap number 3 with 17 minutes remaining. We should get 50, I would imagine something like 20 laps possibly out of this one. In the 15-minute races earlier on, we secured 15 laps in both of them, so if this is a 20-minute race, you could argue we should get 20 laps out. Might just be 19 now, it depends on how they get on, and traffic, which will come into play to a larger degree in this one. Further down through the order, good little fight going on. Cian Carey in 10th place now, has got Dave Gillett behind him and Richard Purcell. That's a little trio heading up towards Redgate Corner, as it looks as though there was a change in the order there. That was Richard Purcell looking to gain the place there, and I think dived up the inside of the number 18 car of Dave Gillett to give him 11th position and drop Gillett down into 12th place, as already we could see the gaps opening up between the top 3 cars. A second and a half separates Shane Kelly from Jacopo Sebastiani. A further second and a half separates Sebastiani from Wiltshire.
George Line for a podium at least.
I wouldn't be surprised, absolutely, yeah. I mean, at the moment, he's hanging on to the coattails, isn't he, of Stuart Wiltshire? But if we get George Line on the podium, it means you won't get Stuart Wiltshire, possibly.
No, but it does mean that we can find out the story of the weekend, because we've not really spoken to George, have we?
No, we haven't, no. His off in qualifying really compromised his grid position for the first 2 races, didn't it? And therefore, for the champion from last year, George Line, who sort of secured the championship by being Mr. Consistency. We're talking about Shane Kelly wanting more consistency in terms of his championship aspirations. 4 wins last year, missed out on the championship by a point. Shane Kelly last year, George Line last year, 1 win, secured the championship by a point because he was consistent throughout the course of the year.
Stuart Wiltshire is having none of it because he's responded on that last lap. He's gone a bit quicker, hasn't he? He's extended the gap to almost a second now.
He has, yeah. The gap has come out by another 1/10 of a second, hasn't it? So it's up to 0.923 of a second between Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, George Line, who sits there in 4th position. There's also a good fight going on by the look of things for 6th and 7th place. At number 9, Peter Venn is having to drive a fairly wide Dallara to try and keep the aspirations of James Heffernan at bay at this stage, as Shane Kelly is now about to conclude another lap. The amount of daylight certainly growing between himself and Jacopo Sebastiani in 2nd position, and yet Stuart Wiltshire responding again on that lap, is he? No, the gap's come down by another 10th, so Stuart Wiltshire eking it out by a gap. George Line thinking otherwise and bringing the gap back down to just 0.8 of a second on that occasion. Peter Venn in 6th place, still under pressure at the wheel of car number 9 from James Heffernan, very much together as they turn their way through the right-hander at Redgate Corner. And also now Malcolm Scott under attack from Cian Carey. That is the number 66 car of Malcolm Scott in 9th position, just heading out of Redgate Corner. He's got the Irishman right behind him and giving him plenty to think about as they worked their way up towards what is these top of the Craner curves. Shane Kelly, in the meantime, is sort of pressing on and starting to run away and hide to a degree. He is comfortably in the lead of the race. A new fastest lap of the race from him last time through, a 1 minute 2.5 exactly for Shane Kelly. And he's about to thread his way back over the start-finish line yet again. The fastest lap should be down in the 1 minute 1s, I would have thought, by the time we get there. He goes even quicker, another 1/4 of a second quicker on that lap, 1 minute 2.263. The lead advantage extends up to 3.1 seconds between himself and Jacopo Sebastiani. Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, now under a greater amount of pressure from George Line, who's managed to close the gap back up again once more. He's not quite as yet in a position that he's able to attack, but he's only now 0.6 of a second behind, so he really has closed the gap. And now Malcolm Scott is side by side with Cian Carey. Cian Carey's on the left-hand side of the circuit. The outside line heading up towards Redgate Corner is not quite going to work for him, so he tucks himself back behind once more. And that is the 4 cars for 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th position. Malcolm Scott, Cian Carey, Richard Purcell, and then the car of Dave Gillett, that are all very much together, threading their way down through what will be the Craner curves. Clock ticking away of the scheduled 20 minutes for this slightly longer 3rd race of the weekend. We've got 12.5 remaining. Shane Kelly continually posting faster lap after faster lap after faster lap. On that occasion, however, he's just a shade slower than his previous best, but more importantly, he's still 0.4 of a second quicker than the car in 2nd position, Jacopo Sebastiani. Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, again responding to the pressure of George Line, so the gap comes back out to almost a second between those two. And poor old James Heffernan's car, all of a sudden, sounds rather sick as it goes over the start-finish line. Hugely frustrating for James. I'd imagine enormously frustrating for Hewell Lloyd and the CF Racing team, because the first part of the race, the car's very sweet. Thereafter, it starts to misfire. Into the pit lane comes Malcolm Scott, possibly for retirement again. Certainly for retirement is car number 49, with front wing missing as well now for Richard Purcell, who is going to retire the car opposite the start line.
A torrid weekend it's been for Malcolm Scott. He trudges down the pit lane and is inevitably going to turn left and finish up in the paddock. That's an unpleasant finish to a very disappointing weekend.
Well, Malcolm Scott only posted 2 non-finishes over the course of the whole of last season. He's posted 3 non-finishes this weekend already.
It's not fair, is it?
No, just such a tough weekend. But he'll bounce back. He'll be back out at Snetterton, I'm sure, for what is another treble header meeting there for the 2nd event of the season. Shane Kelly now is leading by some 3.7 seconds from Jacopo Sebastiani. You'll be able to hear, Alan Hyde, the sickening car again of poor old James Heffernan.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yep, I don't even need to be on the pit wall to hear it. I'm standing by the by the garages, and yeah, it's worse than before, isn't it?
Yeah, it starts well in the race, and just as the engine gets warmer and warmer and warmer, it sort of comes on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've also now had a change for 8th and 9th position, because Mark Harrison made a bit of a hash of Redgate Corner that time through, so the number 28 car is no longer in 8th. Cian Carey, the Irishman, who retired in the race earlier on today, has managed to move his way through at the wheel of car number 19, and Mark Harrison, sort of, by the time he turned in and managed to keep the car from going into the gravel trap up at Redgate Corner, has not just lost the position, he's probably lost a few seconds thereafter as well by the time he got back up to racing speed. The race leader is now onto his 10th lap of the race. Lap after lap after lap, the gap just keeps coming up by a tenth or so. It's now up to 3.8 seconds between first and second, but Jacopo Sebastiani is comfortably pulling away from Stuart Wiltshire in third place. There's a 5.2 second deficit between second and third. Stuart Wiltshire in third place is still keeping George Lyne's aspirations at bay. They're lapping within a tenth of a second of each other, but the gap has now increased to almost 1.2 seconds between Stuart Wiltshire, on for his second podium of the weekend, and the champion from last year, George Lyne, who has had a difficult weekend, what with the off in qualifying and 2 starts from the tail end of the field, and at the moment is not really making an impression on a potential podium place in this one. Fifth place is number 4, Tony Bishop. 6th is Peter Venn. 7th is the rather poorly car of James Heffernan. Cian Carey in 8th. Mark Harrison in 9th. Dave Gillett still completes the top 10 the way things stand, and we are now past the halfway point of this race. 10 laps completed, 9.5 minutes just under to go. The lead advantage having stretched yet further to now 4.4 seconds almost between first and second. And in third place, Stuart Wiltshire has further increased the advantage between himself and George Lyne. Yeah, he really has.
Going really well.
He's just got on with it, hasn't he? And quite surprising that George Lyne hasn't quite had the pace this weekend that we would have thought.
No, it's a good point. Yep.
So George Lyne, Mr. Consistency in the championship last year, won the championship by just 1 single point, took only 1 win. He had 5 second places and a couple of thirds and 5 fourths, a 5th and a 6th as well. So there's only a couple of occasions throughout the whole year he was outside of the top 6, George Lyne, and it was that consistency that wrapped up the championship for him. Poor old James Heffernan has decided enough is enough. The number 8 car that's been a little bit poorly all weekend is heading down the pit lane, so that's another retirement. So Robbie Watts retired early on. We saw Richard Purcell retire with damage to his front wing opposite the start-finish line. We lost Malcolm Scott into the pits a few laps ago. Now we've lost James Heffernan as well. So we are now down to 11 cars circulating in this final F3 Cup Championship race of the weekend. And Shane Kelly leads Jacopo Sebastiani by 5 seconds now. He pulled out another 3/4 of a second on that lap, so 5 seconds between first and second. Sebastiani's got 6 seconds in hand between himself and Stuart Wiltshire, who is again pulling out to the tune of another 1/10 of a second per lap over George Lyne. The relative gaps between everybody at the moment are increasing, other than in 7th place, car number 19, Cian Carey, is actually the second quickest car that's circulating at the moment. The Irishman making progress from the tail end of the field, started 14th in this race. He is now up to 7th, so he's passed half of the field. Not necessarily on circuit, some of them has been as a result of retirements, and he is lapping almost 2 seconds quicker than Peter Venn, who's in 6th position. So keep an eye towards car number 19, the black car with the green flashes down the side of it in the hands of the Irishman. May well get himself inside the top 6 if he can. He's got plenty of time in which to do so. There's still 7 minutes at this stage, as the leading 4 cars are over the start-finish line. You wait the arrival of the 5th place car, Tony Bishop, now into sight. And then let's just have a quick look at the gap between Peter Venn and Cian Carey. It was 9.7 seconds, almost 10 seconds. Peter Venn heads over the start-finish line. Cian Carey appears into sight now. Peter Venn's time was a 1 minute 4.4. Cian Carey's a 1 minute 2.9, yeah, so the gap's down to 8.3 seconds, so it's going the right way, but there's still a lot of daylight between Peter Venn in 6th place and Cian Carey in 7th, and it may well be that Peter Venn is driving with a little bit of extra time in hand. The closest fight that we've got is down for 8th and 9th place. Car number 18, Dave Gillett, the blue and yellow machine, under pressure from number 28, Mark Harrison. In fact, having gained that place from Mark Harrison on the lap that they've just concluded, Mark Harrison looking to return the favour. And James Heffernan, Alan, back out of the pits, is he?
They've not done anything to the car. A conversation was taking place, and I thought it was all rather sort of doom and gloom and, you know, back off to the paddock. But I think they've probably said something along the lines of, you're not going to do any damage, so so go out and enjoy and finish.
Well, he may as well in reality, because the points are awarded regardless of class and go all the way down to 15th position. So James Heffernan is 12th at the moment, so even if he keeps circulating, that's still 6 championship points,
yeah,
which could be handy at the end of the year.
Could be, yep.
So back out and circulating goes James Heffernan. Shane Kelly comfortably in the lead of the race now, some 5 3/4 seconds up the road from Jacopo Sebastiani, with the further 6.3 seconds in hand has Jacopo between himself and Stuart Wiltshire, who's now pulled away to the tune of 2 seconds from George Line. Let's have a look at Cian Carey. The gap is now down to 6.2 seconds between Peter Venn in 6th position and Cian Carey in 7th place. Cian was a full 2 seconds a lap quicker on the lap that they've just concluded, so I think he's going to catch. It's whether he can then get past, because of course once he catches, at some point he'll get in the dirty air. New fastest lap of the race from Shane Kelly that time through as well. The race leader now is 8 3/4 seconds before too much longer up the road, 1 minute 2.217, and whatever was said to James Heffernan clearly was, go out, try it. If it doesn't work, come back in, I would imagine, because he instantly trundles back down the pit lane again. Hugely frustrating weekend for him as well. In fact, that looks as though that is in towards Parc Fermé this time through. Yeah, he turns left at the end of the pit lane, Alan.
Shame, yep.
Well, I suppose a bit like Malcolm Scott's weekend, it's been pretty frustrating for James Heffernan, wasn't it? Because he non-finished.
Hugely frustrating, yeah.
Non-finished in race 1, didn't he? Race 2, he'd got that misfire, and race 3, it still won't go away.
Engine woes, and obviously engine woes are big woes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's possible for, if you were competing in British Formula 3, yep, they can change an engine, they can do things very quickly. When you're racing in other forms of motorsport, it's not quite so simple, is it? We get so blasé with teams being able to pull an engine out of a touring car and pop another one in just an hour and a half or 2 hours in between a race. Well, you can't always do that sort of thing, so it's a shame.
Yeah,
Big
it is.
shame.
Yeah, CF Racing, a very good team, and had they have had the facility to do that, without question, Huel would have done it. But there just isn't time within the timetable, within the manpower that they have at the race meetings when they're running multiple cars as well. So normally frustrating.
And it's the cost as well, of course. You know, it's hugely expensive. You don't carry around spare engines all the time, would one?
Absolutely not. Cian Carey, I did say watch out for him. He is now within 1.6 seconds of gaining 6th place from Peter Venn, but more importantly, he's just posted the fastest lap of the race that we've seen so far. That does come with 1 championship point as well, the fastest lap. So a 1 minute 2.025 is faster than anybody else has done in this race so far. That gives him 1 extra championship point, but it now moves him right up onto terms potentially with the number 9 car of Peter Venn at the end of this particular lap. Let's just have a quick look. Yeah, they are pretty much together this time coming out of Coppice Corner. Cian Carey will pick up a bit of the tow as they head onto the exhibition straight. Are we going to see a change in the order for 6th place? Is the Irishman going to go through and ahead of Peter Venn? Not quite is the answer. There'll be nose to tail coming out of Roberts. Here they come over the start-finish line. Cian Carey from 14th on the grid, now looking for 6th position. He's looking to try and muscle his way up the inside, is he? He's going to be as late on the brakes as he can at Redgate Corner, through, up the inside, place gained. Cian Carey now up into 6th position from 14th on the grid. He now needs to try and gain another 4 seconds if he wants to catch the car ahead of him now in 5th place, which will be Tony Bishop. Tony Bishop been lapping in a 1 minute 4 second lap. Cian Carey, we know, is capable of doing 2 minute 2s in clear air, so be interesting to see exactly how he gets on. Our race leader, Shane Kelly, pressing on, now having to deal with the traffic as he heads on to lap number 18. Plenty of time to deal with it, however, as he's got a 9.8 second advantage between himself and the number 6 machine of Jacopo Sebastiani. We've still got Stuart Wiltshire, number 5, in 3rd place, but the gap between himself and George Line has started to be eroded again. It's now down to 1 1/4 seconds between the cars in 3rd and 4th places respectively. Number 4, Peter Bishop, in 5th place. Is he being caught by Cian Carey? Yes, he is. Cian Carey 1.3 seconds quicker that time in his newly acquired 6th place. That means that he's now just 3 seconds adrift of Tony Bishop, but there's only 1 minute and 20 seconds to go in this race, so he might catch. It's going to be a very big ask for him to try and squeeze his way through in the remaining time in this one. as Shane Kelly will very shortly come through and head on to another lap. 1 minute and 6 seconds to go, so only onto his penultimate lap potentially, onto lap number 19. I think we will squeeze the full 20 out of this one, but it's somewhat in Shane Kelly's hands. If he eases off his lap time to the tune of about 1.5 seconds, we probably won't get the extra lap in. If he keeps pushing, then we probably will get the full 20 in. So Shane Kelly leads 10 seconds now is the advantage, 10.5 between himself and Jacopo Sebastiani. Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place, responding to the fact that George Line was closing, pops in his best lap of the race so far, so the gap really extends back up again now for the final podium place. There's 3.5 seconds between Wiltshire in 3rd and George Line in 4th. What of the charging Cian Carey? He closes up to the tune of 1.6 seconds on that lap and is now within 1.5 of getting himself up into 5th position from 14th on the grid. So the Irishman, who used to compete in Formula Renault, is looking to try and really turn the screw and perhaps ask a few questions of Tony Bishop, the man from Whipsnade, in this what will be now the penultimate lap of the race, because with 2 seconds to go, Shane Kelly gets back over the start-finish line. So now clock is already at 0 as Shane Kelly's down towards Redgate Corner. So he is on his 20th and final lap of the race. He can afford to just stroke it home, and it does look as though he's going to repeat the feat of 2016 and claim a clean sweep of victories here at Donington Park to get his 2017 campaign off in an identical manner as he did last year as well. What of the squabble for 5th and 6th place? Tony Bishop heads in towards Roberts, and Cian Carey has certainly caught him on this lap. 1 lap to go. Tony Bishop's going to have to try and cling on to 5th place here, but Cian Carey's a little bit quicker, heading onto the Wheatcroft straight. Tony Bishop's going to go defensive at Redgate Corner. Cian Carey tries to take a wide line in to cut back on the exit of the corner, but the man from Whipsnade still hangs on to it. The Irishman still sitting there in 5th place. They charge their way down through the Craner curves in towards the old hairpin, so through the left-hand element of the Craner curves and then onto the brakes and carrying as much speed as Tony Bishop can through the apex of the old hairpin. But Cian Carey looked to be a little bit quicker as 3 victories out of 3 go the way of Shane Kelly in F3 Cup. He has made it a clean sweep of victories. Jacopo Sebastiani is going to come through in 2nd place. The podium will be completed by Stuart Wiltshire in 3rd place. George Line will finish in 4th, but who's going to finish in 5th and 6th is still very much up for debate. Tony Bishop still hanging on to the position, heads out of Coppice Corner and then instantly hugs the right-hand side of the circuit so as to protect the inside line in towards the braking area for what will be Roberts. Is it going to be Tony Bishop in 5th place? Is it going to be Cian Carey? It's Cian Carey that swept his way through into 5th place on the final lap from 14th on the grid. That is a good recovery drive from the Irishman. He comes through and finishes in 5th position. Tony Bishop in 6th place. Peter Venn, number 9, will finish in 7th place. 8th place, a lap adrift, will go the way of Dave Gillett. 9th place is number 28, Mark Harrison. And 10th place, we'll see him on the podium because he was the sole representative in the trophy class, but 3 finishes out of the 3 races and didn't embarrass himself amongst the Cup cars either. Car number 58, Adrian Holy. So a clean sweep of victories for Shane Kelly. He's got a bit more hugging to do, Alan, I suspect, before he gets up onto the podium, because if they were happy with 1 win and they were happy with 2, they surely got to be delighted with 3.
Elated, I reckon. Yeah, the team will make their way down already. The media crew are making their way down, recording all of it on video. There we go.
He's number 6, Bob Berridge, now on his own in this race.
Well done, mate. Well done. Well done, mate.
Anders will do the first one for us because that is the Sunoco Fastest Driver of the Weekend award, and that goes to, after a very impressive drive, number 19, Cian Carey. Well done, Cian. The next award we will present is for the winner of the trophy class. He is the only driver in trophy class, but he has to win everyone. He has to finish everyone to win. Adrian Holy. Well done, Adrian. Congratulations, onto the podium. It's his 3rd trophy of the weekend, and I hope he's got a big trophy cabinet. Makes his way off the podium now. 3rd place, Stuart Wiltshire. Well done, Stuart. Congratulations. Here he comes. 2nd place, Jacopo Sebastiani. Congratulations. A great weekend on the podium for all 3 of the races. And the winner, the treble, the hat-trick, Shane Kelly. He really is the king of Donington Park in F3 Cup. Big cheer from the students and the team down there on pit wall.
We didn't quite get the fastest lap, but you know, Cian done a good job from the back, I think, and so he deserved.
Going well for that. It was lap after lap was fastest lap.
Yeah, it just 3rd race on these tyres. It seemed to get a little bit away from us at the end, so I thought there's no point pushing for it. We just stay as we are.
It's a lovely moment when you get out the car and meet up with all the team that worked so hard on the car.
Just looking at Stuart, actually. So.
He's a worry at all times, really, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, every time they work hard all weekend, don't miss a beat, really. You know, skipped lunch earlier and just carried on through. You know, it was a tight schedule. And yeah, like I said, I was getting into a rhythm out there and just kept pushing and pushing. I saw the gap, and as soon as you get traffic, the gap seems to extend, and then just save tyres.
Now, you started the season in this way last year here at Donington Park, and then maybe as the season went on, the consistency ebbed away from you. This year, it's got to be a consistent season. It's got to maintain this momentum, if you like.
Yeah, we have a year's experience with the car, and we have it's a new team, but you know, we started well again, but we have that data, that you know, that a bit of know-how. And I'm not saying everything, but it makes life a little bit easier.